story because me and Melissa saw an unidentified species of flying snake. So when I was a child, I realized that the earliest memory that I had for a long time, I thought it was a dream. I thought it was one of my early dreams that I had. And it wasn't until recently, through going on this trek through Marble Canyon and seeing the flying snake, and then realizing that this painting that was in my family's home when I was growing up as a child was of Marble Canyon. There was this painting of a canyon. And I remembered through going to the canyon, oh my gosh, this painting that was in my family's house is of this canyon where we saw the flying snake. Through remembering that memory of this painting that was in the house as a child, I started to remember this dream that I had when I was very young. I had this dream where I was taken to the hospital, I was taken to a doctor, I was having a problem with my penis. There was something wrong, and I remember being embarrassed and getting taken to the doctor and then being told that part of me was going to be cut off, right? And I remember feeling separation anxiety when it was taken away from me. And I remember asking the doctor, where did it go? And the doctor said, it's right next to you. And I remember thinking as a 1.5-year-old child, oh, that it must mean that it's laying in bed next to me. It's right next to me. And I was like my security. It was like the teddy bear, foreskin, that was laying next to me in bed, kept me feeling secure and comfortable. And the doctor told me to go back to sleep. And I remember going back to sleep. And through remembering this memory, I realized, oh my God, this isn't just a dream, a memory of a dream that I had. This is an actual memory. I'm remembering being circumcised at the age of like 1 year and 9 months or so. See, my parents were hippies and they weren't going to circumcise me. But the issue is that the foreskin of the baby needs to be kept clean, okay? It needs to be cleaned, and if it doesn't get cleaned, the baby can get infections in its dick, right? I know it's like kind of gross. Anyways, this is my first memory, okay? I wasn't going to be circumcised, but then the doctor, after repeated infections, the doctor said, oh, if you want these infections to go away, just circumcise the baby. I'm not an advocate of circumcision. Actually, it decreases feeling and sensation for the male. So anyways, aside from that, this is my first memory. I also remember being like 3 and 4 years old and getting really sick with pneumonia and having fever dreams. Fever dreams happen to small children because small children can have fevers of like 104 degrees. And when children have fevers that are that high, they will actually start to hallucinate. So I remember having these crazy fever dreams where, for example, a ghost dog ran out of the wall and came and jumped into my bed. And then when it jumped into my bed, it disappeared into the sheets and I was like kicking at it. But then all the sheets turned into all these like cats that then were like flowing through the air. Really trippy stuff. So one of my early moments of empowerment was I was 5 years old and I decided that I was going to build a bird trap, right? I built this bird trap with a butterfly net that I was given for my birthday. And then I took a stick and I propped up the butterfly net with the stick. And then I took a little string and I dipped the string in glue. And then I dipped the glue string in birdseed. And then I tied the birdseed string to the stick that was holding up the net. And then I put a little pile of birdseed under the net with the glue string under the pile of birdseed. 5-year-old, I went and checked this bird trap out. I checked up on it in like 2 hours and I caught a bird, right? And can you imagine the sense of empowerment for a 5-year-old to have a goal to say, I'm going to set out to catch this bird with my trap and actually do it? Because the process of being a child, a lot of it is learning that the world isn't as magical as you thought it is. Learning that a lot of the goals that you can set out to try to accomplish are much more difficult than you thought it would be. This is one of the sad realities of growing up, is realizing that stuff is hard. But for me, that moment of empowerment told me that I can do anything if I set my mind to it. I had dreams as a child that I could fly, and everybody around me was looking up at me, asking me, "How are you doing that? Oh my gosh, how are you flying? Will you please teach us? Please teach us how to fly." And me trying to teach people. It was like a little movement with my legs and kicking up with my legs, and nobody could learn how to do it. These were the dreams that I would have. So many flying dreams that I would have. You know, I loved Ninja Turtles. I liked My Little Ponies. You know, my parents, my father was never very masculine. You know, my parents weren't ones to tell me, don't like My Little Ponies, that's for girls. You know, they let me like My Little Ponies, and for my 5th birthday, I got My Little Pony napkins. Trust me, it's going to get more interesting when I turn into a teenager. I was a really smart kid. I did really well in school. I was so afraid to get in trouble. But I even told my mom when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, I said, "Mom, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a bad guy and burglarize houses, and then I can hide in the sewers like the Ninja Turtles." I remember telling my dad, my father, when I was 3 years old, the cutest thing. I said, "Daddy, I realize what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be what you are, a daddy." Because I didn't realize that, you know, mommies and daddies also had day jobs. I thought that that was their job, was being a mommy and a daddy. So as I grew up, you know, I remember going to DARE and learning that drugs were bad. I remember learning that, you know, oh, this is marijuana. This is what a joint looks like. This is what a crack pipe looks like. The school resource officer brought in a suitcase and showed us what all these things were. And then I remember going camping at this place where they grew all this peyote. And I remember the first time I saw my father smoking a joint. I saw it getting passed around, this circle of hippies, and I almost crapped my pants. I got really scared. I was like, oh my gosh, my father is smoking marijuana. I could not believe it. It totally readjusted my value system because the police had told me that drugs are bad. Well, I became aware that my father was growing peyote in the backyard, and he had about 2,000 peyote buttons growing in the backyard. He also had a crop of poppies. He would harvest the opium. He also had marijuana plants growing in a greenhouse in our yard in Tucson, Arizona. Don't tell the authorities because none of that stuff exists anymore, but this is the household that I grew up in. When I was 12 years old, my father took me camping, and he essentially took me on a vision quest where he fed me peyote cactus. And within an hour and a half, I was asking my dad, "Dad, is there any way to make this less intense? It's too intense. Is there any antidote to make it less powerful?" You know, because I was really tripping hard. It was really, really intense to eat peyote at 12 years old. You know, I would never do that to a child. It was way too early. And it exposed me to the wide world of drugs at a young age. I was like, oh my gosh, just taking a little tiny substance can alter your mind so drastically. And then it was my father's best friend, Derek Westland, our neighbor, who smoked me out with marijuana for the first time when I was 13 years old. You know, 13, you know, I was starting to smoke weed. The second time I smoked weed, it was with my father. You know, he was smoking a joint in the backyard, and as I passed by, he said, "I bet you want this." And just, you know, I can see your comments, so if you say anything, you know, it might deviate me off track, but I will answer any questions that you have. You know, Derek gave me other drugs. I remember one time I wanted to try my father's poppy tea. Hey, what's up, Sid? So what I did to try my father's poppy tea was I took some of his poppy pods, dried poppy pods, I crushed them up, and I added them to the tea that he was already brewing. Well, when my father came home, he realized that I'd done this, and he said, "What, you're trying to try opium?" And I said, "Yes, Dad." And he's like, "Well, here, these poppies are mine. This is what I want, but here's a Vicodin. Try this." And he gave me a Vicodin, which is like more potent than the opium. He just wanted the opium all to himself. So, this guy, Derek Westland, was my father's best friend. This guy started living in our backyard, in our greenhouse, and he got onto this trip of being naked all the time. He was also naked with his girlfriend. He built a sauna in our backyard, a sweat lodge, and sometimes all of these hippies would come over and get naked and go in the sauna and sweat all their toxins away. And I would call my friend up and be saying, "Hey, Jonathan, you should come over. The naked hippies are here. There's hot naked hippie chicks here." Right? And we'd go into the sauna and kind of like try to sneak glances at the young naked hippie chicks. It was pretty ridiculous. And there's all these side stories, that I could tell. Like, one example is my friend Esteban and I were jamming on guitars. We're like playing guitar. I was like, I loved Jimi Hendrix, and I was like, I'm gonna be a rock star. I remember my first electric guitar. It made me so happy. My mother started taking me into guitar lessons, and I learned guitar, and we were jamming on guitar in my bedroom, and all of a sudden, Derek, this naked hippie, walks into my doorway with long blonde dreadlocks down to his butt, and he says, "Hey, could you guys keep it down? We're trying to do a ceremony out here." And then he walks out of my doorway, and my friend Esteban had never seen this guy before in his life. He does a double take, and he's like, "Dude, what the fuck was that?" And I go, "Oh, that's Derek, the naked hippie that lives in my backyard." So this guy, Derek, told me that the best advice he has for me is to sell drugs in high school, because I wouldn't get into as much trouble as if I was an adult. I remember he drove me to this peyote church, and while he was driving me, he was telling me about how great drugs are. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm high on peyote, opium, and marijuana right now, and I'm doing fine driving you." I'm like a 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid, right? And this guy's driving me around as high as a kite. He was writing a book on how to stay high and stay alive, how to responsibly use drugs, and how to not get addicted and not die of a drug overdose. Thank you, Malachi. Wow, thanks for the donation. I really appreciate it. I'm getting real with you guys. I'm getting vulnerable. I'm telling you all the nitty-gritty dirt from my past, raised by hippies. So this guy, Derek, died of a drug overdose before he could finish writing the book about how to stay high and stay alive, how to not die of a drug overdose or get addicted, right? And right there, he was a positive bad role model in a sense, because he died before he could finish writing the book. It really showed me that his hypothesis was wrong. He himself disproved his own hypothesis with his death. And I remember waking up in the morning and hearing my father bawling. Like, to hear your own dad crying is really sad, but I remember hearing my father crying, and Derek had died of a drug overdose the night before. He OD'd on a combination of poppy tea, Vicodin, and Klonopin, right? 3 different downers. It was a bad idea, big mistake. Oh, and I must say, growing up, I was raised in the Native American Peyote church. My father had about 2,000 peyote buttons growing in the backyard. I would pick them and give them to my friends to try to gain popularity. And because of all the drugs that were around me, it was weird. It was like, at first, I started off being this guitar player guy. I was like, when I was 9 years old, I started playing guitar, and I was like, yeah, this is what I'm good at. And see, I think all kids, when they enter adolescence, they're trying to figure out, what am I good at that can benefit my tribe? How can I use my skills and attributes to help to be awesome within my tribe? So I was like, I'm a guitar player. This is what I'm good at. And then when I hit high school, it was like all the kids started playing guitar, right? All the kids were like, oh, this is the best thing. And I realized I was no longer as unique as I thought I was. Kids didn't care that I could play Romance on guitar. that I could play classical finger picking with my fingers. They didn't care about that. They cared whether or not you could play Enter Sandman by Metallica, you know? And I was like, man, I have to learn all these rock and roll songs. Here, watch. This is Romance. I'll show you. This is the type of stuff I learned how to play when I was like 12 years old on guitar. Whoops. I messed it up. Anyways, you get the point. It's I would do this finger picking. So, get to high school, and the fact that I had eaten peyote, all of the druggy kids were really fascinated by this, right? All the kids that, you know, the skaters, the punks, stoners, they're like, wow, you've tried peyote? And it was this instant point of popularity where I was the kid that could get a hold of peyote because my father had 2,000 peyote buttons, right? And so I would steal the peyote from my father and give it to the kids at school to try to win friends and gain popularity. And so I developed an identity as a druggy kid. I was even going into the washes and picking Jimson weed, datura or scopolamine weeds, and I was basically making tinctures out of it. I was mixing it with rubbing alcohol and evaporating the rubbing alcohol and then scraping the residue off and then putting this into pills. Like, I thought I was going to become a chemist, designing, you know, weird drugs for people to try. You know, this developed as my identity. Now, I did want to say that, so I was raised in the Native American Peyote church. This is the religion where they ingest peyote cactus and go into ceremonies, or in ceremony, and they have visions, and it really helps. It helps people with a lot of things. You know, it helps people get over alcoholism. It helps, you know, people remember that the point of life is to know one's creator, and the point of life is to learn how to love, how to, you know, be a more kind, loving person, to gain these virtues of patience, tolerance, trustworthiness, all of these things, you know. And whenever I've taken psychedelics, I feel like it's a place where it reminds you of your true purpose in life. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it reaffirms that, you know, love is the answer. You know, it reminds you of that. Ecstasy, cocaine, marijuana, heroin, all these other drugs don't do that. But peyote, mushrooms, LSD, they remind people about love, to be more loving. And that's why, you know, the fraternity brothers that go to Burning Man, the businessmen, all these people, it doesn't bother me that, you know, they've kind of infiltrated and taken over Burning Man, because they become burn-agains. They become burners themselves. And, you know, maybe this is the one opportunity that some of these businessmen have to go to Burning Man and have their first mushroom trip on the playa and cry their brains out, realizing that they've been a selfish jerk and that they should be more spiritual. You know, maybe this is the only opportunity. Maybe Burning Man was the only opportunity for them to have that experience. So, drugs aren't a bad thing. It's a tool to accomplish things with. I want to say, though, so I was raised Native American Peyote church by my father. My mother, and my parents were still married during all this. My mother raised me Baha'i, right? She was part of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i Faith. Now, the Baha'is is a very modern, progressive religion. So, they believe in evolution. They believe in science. That the reason why Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, the reason why these older religions don't mention evolution, or they aren't like scientifically based, is because the time period when these religions came about, there was little understanding of science, right? If Jesus was to explain to those people way back then what evolution was, it would have gone right over their heads. Could you imagine Jesus trying to explain to people the Industrial Revolution, right? All of the Christians, you know, in the prophecies, they say, well, in the 1800s, the 1900s, this is when the world is supposed to end, right? 2,000 years from Christ, right? The end of the world is supposed to happen. The Baha'i interpretation of the end of the world is actually that the end of the world means the end of the old world and the beginning of a new world, a new era, right? Because there's no way for Jesus to explain the internet to people 2,000 years ago. I mean, people didn't even know what caused sickness. They thought that it was evil spirits that caused sickness. They didn't even know what bacteria was. Could you imagine Jesus trying to explain the internet to people 2,000 years ago? I mean, first you have to explain electricity. Then you have to explain how electricity can work within circuits to make a computer function. And then you have to explain to people that the world is not flat and that there can be satellites floating around the planet that send signals of, the internet all around the world. What you have to explain what fiber optics is to those people way back then. So this is the Baha'i interpretation. It's very modern. They believe in independent investigation of the truth, which means that because we are educated and literate today, it's our duty to read sacred texts and writings for ourselves and determine our own personal connection with our higher power. Right? That nobody can tell you that you're wrong for what you believe. That's the only thing that's wrong, is telling, well, you're going to hell unless you believe in our church. We're going to force you to be a part of our religion. That's wrong. These, Christianity, Islam, they would convert people with the edge of the sword. But that's how the world was back then. You take over people in another land, and anybody that doesn't want to be killed then becomes your slaves, where they have to do whatever you say. I mean, this is the Greeks and the Romans. I mean, this is history. That's how the world was. It was a much more violent time. So, and Baha'i believes in complete equality between men and women. That the only reason why this wasn't a principle in Islam and Christianity, all these previous religions, was because, well, people, the humanity wasn't ready for it, right? These prophets will not teach people things that we are not ready to hear. And that's why, Baha'i is the religion for the new world, right? The old world has ended through the Industrial Revolution and the telecommunications revolution, and that's the interpretation. That's what I say to Jehovah's Witnesses. So Baha'i was very progressive, modern. Native American Peyote Church was very primal, earthy, worshiping every tree, every plant. Every animal has its own spirit, its own God. You can pray to the God of the mountain. There's a God that lives in the cave. It's polytheistic. It's a tribal religion that was brought about by the Huichols, but it also incorporates aspects of the Sioux, Lakota Sioux, and their traditions as well into the ceremonies. So it was a very interesting upbringing because I was shown two opposite sides of a spectrum of religions, very earthy, primal, ancient, and very modern and progressive, which is the Baha'i. But both these religions were very open-minded to the teachings of other religions. Both Baha'i and Native American Peyote Church basically say the most important thing is that you believe in a creator, a higher power. That this is a connection that you have with yourself. And nobody can tell you what to believe. And Baha'i, my father was initially Baha'i, but he felt that it was lacking some of the mysticism that he was craving. So he became Native American Peyote Church and really got into this reclaiming of his Native American roots. My mother has since become Buddhist, but both my parents still believe in Baha'u'llah. They still believe in this prophet of the Baha'i Faith, that he is a legitimate prophet from God. So now getting back to the story, I did do a Native American teepee ceremony where crazy story. I mean, this was my mentality when I was this age. My dad told me, well, if you want to experiment with drugs, get this book, From Chocolate to Morphine, written by Andrew Wild. I mean, this is how I found out about the Jimson weed, scopolamine. There was a picture in the book that said datura growing along a roadside near Tucson, Arizona. I was like, oh my gosh, I've seen this plant in the wash. This is my attitude was like, wow, the wide, wonderful world of drugs. Let me just try all of these drugs. So, when I went to the peyote ceremony with all the Native Americans, I took 2 hits of LSD before the ceremony, right? And then I ate peyote. I'm serious. I was tripping for 4 days straight. I tried to go to school and I couldn't find my class because all the numbers of the classes were doing this, right? I went to the locker room when it wasn't my period, and all the kids were different kids, and they're like, "What are you doing here, Danny? This isn't your class." I was all confused. I went to the nurse's office, and I mean, this is 3 days after the peyote experience, and I remember laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and the Simpsons were playing in the next room, and I would hear Homer Simpson's voice, and it sounded like the Native Americans in the teepee ceremony 2 nights before going, but it was Homer Simpson. Really bizarre. I mean, I did the whole peyote ceremony. Everybody has to go around the fire clockwise. When you puke from ingesting the peyote, the roadman, who's the leader of the ceremony, or his helper would come up to your pile of vomit that's laying in front of you, because everybody's sitting around and you're just supposed to puke in front of you. He would come up to your pile of vomit and he would read your fortune with your puke. I'm serious. He would tell you what your pile of vomit means, right? People would share stories. They would sing. No dancing. And then the next morning, there was a sweat lodge ceremony. And I mistakenly drank more peyote tea because this jar of a liquid is going around the circle, and somebody jokingly asked, "Oh, is that apple juice?" And the roadman said, "Ha ha ha, yeah, it's apple juice." Because I was already tripping so hard, I thought that it really was apple juice. And when I tasted it, even though peyote tea is bitter, my taste buds weren't working properly because of the night before, so I thought it really was apple juice. My taste buds told me, well, you think it's apple juice, so your mind's going to tell you that it's apple juice. So I drank even more peyote. I was up for 4 days. It was some really scary stuff because I was like, am I ever going to come down? I was scared. So, time is going on, and, my father's friend dies of a drug overdose. I just I could go on and on about the crazy trips and the weird experiences that I had, but I decided I wanted to get sober. I started going to raves, and I thought raves were really cool. This was in 2000, or no, the year 1999. I started going to raves, year 2000, in high school, and then, my father would always smoke pot every day, and there was always weed in our house, and then all of the friends, I kind of ditched my nerdy friends. I had all these friends that were in the gifted programs. Oh wow, David, that's nice. Oh man, you guys have some funny ideas. So I wanted to get sober, but I couldn't because all the friends that I had made were all stoners, right? We're all druggy kids. I had ditched all of my nerd friends, because they just weren't as exciting. I had all these friends in the gifted program, and then, I couldn't stop smoking weed. I tried and tried to stop smoking weed, and I couldn't because, well, it was always around me. And the thought that I was addicted, that I was an addict of marijuana, that was my bottom. I mean, I was so distraught in myself that I had no willpower, that I had no self-control. And, I tried to get sober. And then there was this moment where these weird people came into my honors class. I was in the honors program. And these guys came in and they talked about, hey, we used to do drugs, but we got sober. And they shared some funny stories about getting high and feeding their dog marijuana. And then they're like, yeah, we have this extracurricular class. You get to get out of your class and come talk about getting high with us. And I was like, heck no. I'm not going to go and talk to these weird guys, these weird, guys in their 20s about me getting high. I want to stay in my class and learn things that are applicable to my future. I don't want to miss school to go and talk to these guys about getting high. But they singled me out of this class full of honors because I used to have really long hair, like hair down to my chest. I was the only guy with long hair in my class, and they singled me out, and they're like, you're going to sign up to come to the class, right? And I was like, I guess so. A Klan member? What are you talking about, a Klan member? That's ridiculous. A KKK Klan member? I don't know what you're talking about. So, anyways, I signed up, and then I went to this class, and these guys then got me to come to the after-school program that they had. This after school program was this, I thought of it as a sobriety group. And they're like, look, all these kids are all sober. They don't do drugs anymore. They were all hugging me and saying, we love you. You're so awesome. And they're all really seemed genuinely interested in who I was, right? And I was like, wow, this is just the group of people that I need to help me get sober, right? At 16 years old, right? And I was in this group for 2 weeks before they told me, well, you have to go into outpatient. Because that's how they make money. They get your parents to pay for outpatient. And I was like, I don't want to go into outpatient. I've been sober for 2 weeks hanging out with you guys. I remember I had to tell my mom that I was hanging out with this group of kids. And they talked my mom into just crashing at a kid's house without even meeting his parents. I could just stay out till all hours of the night. I mean, these counselors would talk kids' parents into buying the kids cartons of cigarettes because they would say, hey, your kid is trying to get off of cocaine and alcohol. At least let them smoke cigarettes, okay? They need to hold on to just one vice, all right? Because it'll be too hard for them to quit smoking tobacco and alcohol. So this sobriety group was pretty ridiculous. They would, we would just do crazy stuff. We would have video scavenger hunts. We would, get into trouble. I got 2 felonies for making little homemade explosives, and one of them blew up in my hand, and I had to go to the hospital. Hold on a second. I'm just getting the charger because I don't want my phone to die. Man, thank you so much, Malachi, for your donation. That keeps me going. I did try salvia later on in life. Hey, what's up, Nico? I'm telling my life story. It's Sunday, which is the day of the live stream. Anyways, here we go, plugging the phone in. I don't want it to die. Hey, thank you guys all for being here. I appreciate all of you. So yeah, we do crazy stuff like we would tie a mattress to the back of a pickup truck and go surfing down a dirt road. Like somebody would stand on the mattress while it's being pulled by a pickup truck until it caught on fire, of course. The game that I invented was desert bowling, where we would set up TVs and toilets and breakable stuff on the side of the road, and then we would throw a bowling ball out the car window at the stuff that was set up on the side of the road and watch it get broken and destroyed. Yeah, but Cuphead, this was before 9/11, okay? We were just kids, like, making dry ice bombs and stuff. Hey, thank you, Malachi. Thank you so much for your donations. I appreciate it. What we were doing is we were mixing pool shock and brake fluid together, and these would make little fireballs happen. One of them I just made a mistake, and one of them blew up in my hand, and it spread sulfuric acid all across my chest. And I got chemical burns, and I got chemical burns in my eyes. It was one of the most painful things that had happened to me. It literally felt like I was doing a belly flop off the high dive. It was just like a giant slap across my chest and arms. I told the hospital guys the truth of what we were doing, and then they told the police, and then the next day, when I woke up, the police were at the door, and they gave me 2 felonies. Luckily, I was a minor, so they got expunged. But I got use of a deadly weapon within city limits, and then criminal endangerment, right? I got put on a diversion program. So while I was in the Pathway group, I realized that there was like, I learned a lot of things, and this got me to learn how to be more social, how to have confidence when speaking within a group of people. Because really, when you have like a group of 4 or more people and you start to speak, you're like, okay, now I'm going to add something to this group conversation. If you sound very meek and shy, people aren't going to listen to you. But if you sound strong and confident, everybody will turn and listen to you. That's one of the things that I learned. I learned about, you have to give it away to keep it. You have to love. I don't know anything about protesters blocking ambulances. I don't know what that's about. It actually sounds like protesters blocking ambulances could be something that Fox News or InfoWars or right-wing propagandists use to try to paint a negative image of protesters. I've never heard of protesters blocking ambulances. Probably because I don't watch Fox News. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
Oh, look at her makeup.
my nightie.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to tell you about how I got this beautiful, amazing girlfriend later, a little bit later. This happens with the Burning Man part of the story. I don't know what this guy keeps saying, Ningen. What the heck is that?
Ningen. Ningen.
Ninjin. I don't
I
even know.
think he's trying to say another word, but doesn't know how to spell it.
Yeah, I don't know what he's saying. Hey, Mike says hi.
Hi, Mike.
Anyways, back to the story. So I was in this group of like 25 kids, right? 30 kids. And it was like a third girls and 2/3 guys. And I was really wanting to start dating, right? And I was like, gosh, there's only 10 girls in this group. My options are pretty limited. There's like only one that I have a crush on, and she doesn't want to date me. Oh, and by the way, I lost my virginity when I was 15 years old. On New Year's Eve, the year 2000, by the way.
Wow, you're telling them everything.
I'm telling you guys everything. And if you guys want to do a super chat donation for me getting real and exposing myself and my life to you, that's fine. Anyways, I was in this group, and it was a very small, tight-knit group, and I realized it's kind of like a cult, right? This group, it was called Pathways. There was another one called Cornerstone, I think, in Denver, and then there was also there's a few other ones. So I realized that this is kind of like a cult, because their step 2, it was a 12-step program. Their step 2 was, in order to grow, we found it necessary to stick with winners, right? So basically, they didn't want you to hang out with anybody who was not a part of the group, right? They wanted you to ditch all of your old friends that you used to get high with, because, well, you know, they're not winners for you, because they'll just get you high again. And also, they didn't want you to hang out with so-called normies. These are like regular people who don't get high, who don't have a drug problem or anything. You know, they're just regular people. Because they're like, oh, the normies won't understand you. I went on a date with a normie girl I had a crush on from my high school class, and all the kids in Pathways, they all got on my case. They're like, why are you trying to date that normie girl? You know, the counselors couldn't really say anything to me, but, you know, they're like, why don't you want to date a girl in the program? And I'm like, look, this program is 2/3 guys, 1/3 girls, right? There's not that many options. The program didn't really encourage kids to go to college, right? I was college bound. I was in the Honors Academy, and you know, I just felt like after 2.5 years of being in this group and having all the same group of friends, I felt like it was time for me to move on, to graduate. So I did what they called a self-graduate. You know, I'd been in it for 2.5 years, but some kids stayed in this for 5 years. Some people became counselors afterwards. Some people were in this cult-like program for like 10 years because they were counselors afterwards. No, I was sober. I was completely sober for a total of 4 years. Oh, Black Death. So, to answer your questions, I do not delete my previous live streams, but what I do is after a day and a half or 2 days, I make them private. Because a lot of my other subscribers don't like the live streams, and they don't, it's like I've noticed that I was losing subscribers because people were like, what? I subscribed to this guy because I wanted to see magic and levitation. And now he's just doing live streams. Okay, my sign is I am a Leo. Melissa's sign is she is a Taurus. Anyways, so I self-graduated, and the next thing to do was to go into Alcoholics Anonymous, right? That was what they said to do. I started going to AA meetings, and I became part of AA Young People's group, right? My parents moved out of the house that I grew up on. Sorry, I'm leaving a little bit out. Some things happened where the counselors of the program backtracking to Pathway, the counselors told my mom that my father was the problem, right? They told my mother, that she should leave my father. And my mother decided to get separated from my dad, you know, because she agreed with the counselors. So then my father tried to commit suicide several times, right? This is a very traumatic part of my life. And I just turned 16, and I just got my driver's license. and I borrowed the family car, and I ran over a mailbox by mistake in this neighborhood. And I grabbed the mailbox and I threw it to the side and I drove away. And I had this voice in my head telling me, the teachers always told you that this was a felony, that destroying somebody's mailbox is a felony. Then that morning I woke up and I looked out my front window and I saw two police officers walking up to the door. I shit a brick and I was like, oh my God, somebody got my license plate. They're coming to get me, take me to jail. Well, no, they came to take my father to the mental hospital because my father was trying to commit suicide. He had overdosed on 40 pills of Valium. My father ingested 40 pills of Valium, right?
God.
And from the next day he was just really, really high and slurring his speech and didn't make any sense. And the police were asking him, what are you on? What drugs did you take? And my father says, I'm not on anything. I didn't take anything. And they're like, well, you're obviously on something. So they took him to the mental hospital. I was like, oh my gosh, my father's trying to commit suicide. So the people in the program used this as an opportunity to get my mother to pay for another outpatient program. And they told my mother, well, things are really hectic for your son in the home situation right now. Why don't you send him up to Phoenix, Arizona? He'll go through another outpatient up there, and he'll live with other families in Phoenix. This is when I blew up the bomb in my hand. It was the Phoenix group that we were making the little explosives. Anyways, the most traumatic part about all this was my father writing me letters, right, from the mental hospital, trying to apologize for being that bad father. Then, right before I was going to leave to go up to Phoenix, my father got out of the mental hospital, and he came into my bedroom, crying, sobbing, wanting to hug me for extended periods of time, crying on my shoulder, saying, I'm sorry I was such a bad father. I'm sorry I didn't do a good enough job as your dad. I mean, to have my father crying on my shoulder, saying, I'm sorry I wasn't a good enough father. This was kind of traumatic for me. And then I went up to Phoenix, and my dad got better. But then he got worse. He developed pancreatitis, and he was in the hospital for 6 months. He was in a drug-induced coma for a month and a half. The doctor said he had a 20% chance to live, right? My mother wanted to pull the plug on him. They were still married. They'd gotten back together. She wanted to pull the plug because she knew that my father's wishes was that he never wanted to be on life support. My grandparents said, no, he still has a chance to live, so keep him alive. And he recovered. I mean, 20% chance to live, he was that 20%, and he survived. And my father is still alive and kicking today. So, fast forwarding, my mother and father decide to move out. As I'm graduating Pathways, when I was 17 years old, my mother and father moved out of the house that I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. And they said, well, you're going to be going to the University of Arizona in a month. Why don't you find roommates to pay us rent? And you can, collect rent from them and then give the rent money to us. So before I even turned 18, I found myself kind of managing this house from my mother and father. I found myself living on my own in this 3-bedroom house near the University of Arizona, right? That had a sweat lodge in the backyard and a greenhouse. The peyote was gone. My father had given away the peyote. Actually, my father had given away the peyote after Derek Westland died of a drug overdose, because Derek was the one that turned my father on to peyote. Also, Derek was doing bad medicine because Derek was picking peyote buttons in South Texas and northern Mexico and then bringing it to Tucson, Arizona, and just giving it away to all the hippies in Tucson. He was just giving it or selling it, and the Native American elders who administered the Native American Peyote Church had a meeting where Derek was one of the main subjects of what to do about this guy. And they said, well, we don't have to do anything about him because he's already dead. He's just walking dead. And within 6 months, he died of the drug overdose before he could finish writing the book on how to stay high and stay alive. So after that, my father realized, after seeing a rift between the white hippies and the Native Americans who were involved in the Peyote Church, it was like half hippies, half Native Americans. He saw the rift, and he saw that the hippies didn't really respect the Native American church as much as the Native Americans did. He realized that because he had, even though he was 1/4 Cherokee, he had the white man's upbringing. He was raised in white man society. And because of that, he didn't have the same level of respect for the Peyote church as the Native Americans did. Hey, Melissa, could you try angling the camera or the light down a little bit? With the little grip in the back. Let's see. Tell me if this makes the look better. Down. Oh, that's too bright. Okay, go back up. Go back up. All the way back up. Push it up. Okay, that's good. So anyways, my father had given away all the peyote buttons because he realized, I'm going to leave this church up to the Native Americans. Sorry I have to backtrack about stuff that I left out. So I have this house and I start finding roommates through the Alcoholics Anonymous program, right? These young people, the young people in AA young people, these are the bottom of the barrel. These are 28-year-old guys that have already fucked up their lives. Oh, pardon my French. These are people that have already screwed up their lives, that didn't go to college, that, and they're already getting sober at the age of 26 or something, 22 even. So these are kind of some crappy individuals, and I ended up with a lot of people owing me money when I was renting to people from this program. I mean, I had this one roommate who idolized serial killers. He would make me watch documentaries about Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and say, wow, aren't these guys really cool? I mean, this guy was 27 years old, and he brought home a 15-year-old girl and fucked her, right? I remember saying to the girl, she was the younger sister, actually, of a girl that I had met, right? It was was acquainted with, and I said to her, when it was just me and her, was she smoking a cigarette, I said, he's 27, right? A 12-year difference. Almost twice her age. And she said, yeah, I know. I don't care. I mean, she's the reason why my house got teepeed. We went to the store, me and Adrian Pfizer, went to the store to get toilet paper because we were out of toilet paper. And we come home and our house had gotten toilet papered, right? By these girl and her friend that he had fucked, right? I was like, dang it. Why couldn't they have toilet papered the house while we were home? That would have saved us some money on buying toilet paper. So 6 months after my parents moved out of the house, I caught the house on fire, right? I'd met this girl that I'd fallen in love with. Hey, what's up, Malachi? You're back, and you gave me $4 through the super chat function. We're up to $8 in donations. Man, I hope that guy Banana comes back on here. This one time, this guy Banana donated he donated $280 over the course of the whole entire live stream. He kept me on here for 3 hours. What's up, Matt? Cordova? Yes, I do shout-outs. $280. He was giving $11.11 over and over and over again. And he said that he got rich off of cryptocurrency, and that's why he was being so generous. It's okay, I understand that some people are poor and they don't have money to give. But I am trying to do my magic shows and the Levitation shows for a living. What's up, Dark Wolfie? Anyways, I caught my house on fire. Well, it wasn't quite the house, but I'd fallen in love. I met this girl who ended up spending the night. And in the morning, we had a sweat lodge. In the sweat lodge that the hippie, Derek, built. Right? He had built this sweat lodge. And I didn't properly put out the fire that morning. Right? There was leaves at the top of the sweat lodge around the stovepipe. And the leaves smoldered from the heat of the stovepipe. And then they caught on fire. What's up, Tatiana? What's up, Osama bin Laden? Weird name, guy. So the sweat lodge caught on fire from the leaves that were built up around the top of the roof. I should have sprayed the roof of the sauna down with the hose before we did the sauna. I woke up to the neighbors yelling, banging on the front door, yelling, fire, fire, fire. I mean, I had gone to sleep at 9 in the morning and wake up, fire, fire, fire. I jump out of bed. I was still sleeping on the top bunk. Tatiana, I noticed you. If you really want me to notice you, do a super chat donation. Blah, 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 blah. Actually, I don't really care that much about money. I'm only trying to get money to sustain myself. So anyways, look out the window. Neighbors are yelling, "Fire, fire, wake up." Look out the window, and the whole side of the backyard where the sauna was on fire. The greenhouse that had the peyote in it, the tool shed, the side of the house was now catching on fire. The sauna was completely engulfed in flames, right? And I made sure, the neighbors were like, "Is there any cats in the house?" I made sure that I grabbed my cat Jasmine, the cat Jasmine came from one of these AA women who had gotten 2 kittens and a whole other story. Some girl just ditched a cat with me, but got out to the side of the road, and all of the neighbors had come out of their houses to watch my house catch on fire and burn down, right? Everybody in the neighborhood had come out to the street to be like, "Oh, there's a house on fire right there. That house is on fire." And the firefighters got there really quick, and they put it out really fast. I mean, watching those firefighters work really made me feel like, gosh, these guys are heroes. These guys are good at what they do, putting out fires. They put out the fire really, really quick with their fire hoses, and luckily, this house was made out of cinder blocks. It was a brick house. So the tool shed and the greenhouse and sauna that was on the side that had completely gotten burnt down, those things had only the side of the roof had caught on fire, the awning or the fascia board, right, and a little bit of the roof, right. So only part of the house was damaged, but because there was a fire, they had to shut off the gas and the electricity permanently, not the water, but the gas and the electricity. So I decided to stay in the house, and live there for 2 whole months without electricity or running water. No, sorry, Colin, I can't. You could just start from the beginning. Now, and I do see your posts. So I lived with just running water, no electricity, no gas for 2 months. And while the house was repaired, there was an insurance settlement. Insurance is a very good thing. And the demolition team came in and just completely demolished all of the charged structures and demolished the greenhouse. And, I kind of made it my mission that whole summer following that to create something really cool in this vacant space that was created in my backyard. So I redug, the greenhouse was a sunken greenhouse, and I redug the hole and I made a kiva, which became our ceremonial center in my backyard. And then I planted bamboo all the way around the kiva. All the way around, and made this really nice space. Still an Alcoholics Anonymous. My mother encouraged me when I was 19 years old to go on a trip to Bolivia, and this was my first time going overseas, going to another country. I did a study abroad. A kiva is a Native American ceremony location. It's usually actually below ground, and usually there's just one little roof or one little doorway, a small doorway in the roof where you enter from. And there's a ladder that brings you down into the kiva. It's like a room that's underground. So I made the kiva. I went to Bolivia. And through going to Bolivia, I realized that I stayed sober. I actually chewed on coca leaves when I was in Bolivia, but because all the local people in Bolivia chew on coca leaves. And it doesn't make you high like cocaine does. What's up, Jose? It's just like a mild stimulant because it's not refined like cocaine is. Everybody chews on the coca leaves, and I tried it when we were going hiking. I chewed on the coca leaves, put a big wad of it in my cheek, and it just gave me energy, much like caffeine does. But it was a cleaner, less jittery form of caffeine. I didn't drink alcohol, and after I came back from Bolivia, I didn't go back to AA meetings. And I stayed sober for like 4 months. I made it to 4 years sober. And then I realized that I'd had my sobriety date. I think it was like October 31st or something. I had my first sobriety date. Or no, it was October 1st. Wow, Malachi. Yeah, I'm still giving out CDs. That is so awesome. Hey, check it out. Since you gave me a total of like, $24 or $28, email me your address, right? If you want two CDs of my music, let me show them to you. What's up, Jose? Oh, I haven't seen you in a long time either. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm back. Look, I produced these two CDs, which comes back into my story. This one is Levitation music. This is my more recent one. And then doing backflips on top of Swirls Naked. This is my first decent album. I'd made albums before this one, but they were very, very bad. And I wouldn't subject you to listening to them. But Malachi, if you want to, email me your address, and I will mail you both of these CDs. And that goes for anybody that donates $15. Or sorry. It's $15 or more. I will send you two CDs in the mail with some stickers and stuff. It's pretty fun. So yeah, I started producing electronic music. When I was in high school, actually, I started producing electronic music because all of... Oh, yeah, how do you email me? I will write my email down on this piece of paper. Please, don't spam me, guys. Here, tell them something.
Hello. These are his CDs. CDs, if you want to have
So,
one.
I actually traveled to Africa and recorded traditional African music, and I remixed it to this electronic music that's on this album. So when you listen to the CDs, you'll hear traditional African music, and actually also some gamelan music mixed in. Here, let me sit down. So here, I'm going to write down my email address for you. Thanks for coming back, Malachi. I appreciate it. Thanks for donating. It helps me to pay rent on this apartment. No, she is not topless. Somebody asked, is she topless? No. Look, see, I have to pay rent on this apartment here. Look. I know we're getting sidetracked. I'm going to get back to the story. Look, I have fish in there. I mean, it's not very big. Look, this is our bedroom. It's very dark in there.
Hey.
I mean, this is how big it is. Look, here's a painting. This was my first painting that I ever did. Oh, sorry. I lied. This is my first painting that I ever did. When I was in high school. I was a sophomore. And then this is the third painting that I ever did. I don't know if you could see that. Oh, wait, let me get this. Pretty interesting. So, I did get into painting a little bit, but it took me way too long. That one painting with all of the demons bursting out of the earth, that took me 6 months to do it. Okay, here comes the email address. So, if you want the CDs to be mailed to you, just donate $15 or $20 because YouTube is going to take 30% of that. So if you donate $15, they're going to take $5, which only leaves $10 for me. So it's better if you donate $20 because then they take like $6 and that's like $14 for two CDs, whatever. I never made very much money off of my music. So, here's my email address. It's DANWOLVERTON@gmail.com. Okay, here it is. Is that backwards? Should have I written it backwards? Oh my gosh. I can't tell. Danny.wolverton@gmail.com. Oh wait, let's make this an extra M. It's DANY.WOLVERTON@gmail.com. Hey, what's up? Magnum, weird Russian word I can't read. Yeah, so I'm like 20 years old, and I start producing electronic, or I'm a teenager. I start producing electronic music because I go to the guitar class, and I was like, man, this is the most popular class in school, and all these kids are just like, everybody's trying to play guitar. It was like, I was no longer unique for being the guitar player kid. It was like everybody was the guitar player kid, and I started to get into the rave scene and electronic music, and I got an Akai MPC, right? And I started making beats. But I started making beats on this thing, right? I'm gonna show you my first electronic music production station. I still have it today, right here. This is, wait, let me show it like this. This is the Akai MPC 2000, right? Right there, this is what my first beats were made on. You press the pads here. Like that. I went to Bolivia and I started collecting weird instruments, right? Like you may have seen like these things, pan flutes, before. They're pretty neat. I always had an interest in world music. This is the African kalimba. Whoa, oh my gosh. Whoa, craziness. So anyways, I started making beats. Oh man, going back to this spot. Okay. Oh, what? The music? You want to hear the album? Oh man, can I play it? That's a good question. Well, if you want to hear exclusively the traditional music that I recorded in Africa without the electronic part of it, you can go to my SoundCloud. My SoundCloud is Special Head. That was the name. So this gets into where the name Special Head came from. Special Head was actually the name of a joke band that me and my friend Clay Letson started. Clay is also the founder of the Emergency Circus, the group that goes to children's hospitals, group homes, and does free circus shows for children and disaster relief. Like when there's a hurricane, he goes there and he does circus shows for the housing camps, or he goes to refugee camps. Anyways, me and Clay, we started a joke band for MySpace. This was when MySpace first came about, and we were like, let's make a funny joke band to make a band profile on MySpace. And I'm gonna see if I can play this music, all right, in the background while I'm talking. And also, some of the music that's on this CD, I use it in my YouTube videos, right? I play it in the background of some of my YouTube videos. And you'll see at the end of my videos, if I'm using a track that I produced myself, I will often say at the end of the video, I made this music too. Or I'll say it in the description. Hey, Melissa.
Yeah?
Can I ask a favor?
What's up?
One of my fans wants to hear, or one of my supporters, what's his name? He wants to hear it. Brandon Thrasher, are you still here? Because I'll interrupt my girlfriend to play some of the music off of her phone if you really want to hear it. Go to Reverb Nation Special Head. Also, if you want to hear it, you can go to Reverb Nation Special Head. My real name is Danny Wolverton, just like it says on my email. Look, it's danny.wolverton@gmail.com. What's up, cringe channel? Okay.
Okay, hold on.
So the name Special Head, originally it was a joke. It was a joke band where we had this band where we beatboxed and made weird noises. We were like, And at certain points we were like, what's, oh, okay. I'll play oh shoot. Okay, we're gonna just play some songs in the background with Melissa's phone. Brandon says thank you. Yes, please. This song uses gamelan music. This is traditional music from Indonesia that I sampled. I know it's a recording of a recording through a smartphone. I'll just have it play through the background, in the background. So, at points, we're going, right? It was a joke. It was a joke band, and we sounded so bad, it was good, right? And at some points, we sounded like we were mentally ill. We sounded like we were adults with disabilities, right? And we were going over band names, and we were like, Special Ed. And I said, Special Head. That works, Special Head. And we're like, that's a great band name. So initially, that's where Special Head came from. Now, my music originally, I went by the name of, I know I'm losing viewers now that you have found out the truth behind the name Special Head. I'm getting real and honest. So, this is the music. And originally, my electronic music project was called In Search of San Pedro, right? But I realized that name was too long and not memorable enough. And then when I started doing live looping beatboxing and doing comedy hip hop, right? I rapped some really dirty, raunchy songs. Comedy hip hop. I developed into this like dirty, raunchy pimp character. And I realized that the name Special Head was also befitting for the dirty, raunchy pimp guy, because after the show, I get Special Head. After the show, Special Head gets Special Head. Like, oh wait, here, I'll play one of the dirty, raunchy songs. It was all like, well, one of the raps went like this. It was like, I pull up to the party in a garbage. Let's see if Garbage Truck is on here. So it was like, I'll just rap to this shit. Where's it at? Oh, that's mislabeled. So anyways, it went like, I pull up to the party in a garbage truck. Just cause my dick is hanging out don't mean I wanna fuck. If you're touching someone else, you better keep it up. Cause you've had enough of my special nuts. You know, I could keep going with that, but that was some of the music too. This is like a different song. Oh my gosh, I totally have it mislabeled. People asked me for the Garbage Truck song and it was like the wrong song. I know, I totally just lost all of you guys because I was saying dirty stuff, but this is like who I used to be before I traveled. The scarf? What, this thing? This is just what I'm covering up my head with. So anyways, I was making electronic music. I was doing live looping beatboxing. You know, I was like doing this dirty, raunchy comedy hip hop stuff because I wanted to make people laugh. You know, and then I traveled. And I traveled to Africa to study traditional African music because I had always had a fondness of traditional African music. Oh wait, I need to continue playing more of the music to fulfill Brandon's request. I did a lot of different songs. Hold on one second. So, I traveled to Africa. I did a study abroad in Kenya. I had a girlfriend in Kenya. I went to her family's Christmas dinner when I returned. I went to her graduation. I studied traditional African music. I was the only, like one of two exchange students from America going there to study. They hired this extra teacher to teach me traditional African music, East African music, and I was the only student in the class because I was the only one interested in learning about the traditional music from Kenya. I was staying outside of Nairobi. Through this experience, I realized that there was a problem, that all of the young people didn't want to learn their traditional music. They all wanted to learn jazz or Western classical music or do hip hop and R&B. And I was like, why are none of the young people wanting to embrace their heritage, their traditional music? They obviously think that it has little value, and that's the reason. I was like, and I saw it as a problem, and I wanted to return to start an organization that helps traditional African musicians to get their music recorded, to help show the people in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, that their music has value, right? Whoa, cultural influence of others, sad, really. Oh yes, the YouTube adpocalypse did affect me, and I stopped making so much money. I stopped making very much money off of my YouTube channel. Before, one example is like, before I would make between $1,500 and $2,000 a month off of my YouTube channel, which is like almost enough to survive off of. I'd say that you need like, to adequately survive and pay rent, you need like $1,500 to $2,000. Now I average about $800 to $1,000 off of my YouTube channel. So that's like the difference in revenue from the adpocalypse. So that's why I encourage all of you, if you like my channel, if you like what I'm doing, if you like the live streams, which is me just exposing myself and getting real with you and having a connection with all of you guys. I see your comments. I see everything you say. Donate through the super chat function, just like Malachi just gave me $28, and I'm sending him the CDs in the mail because of that. So your donations help, and it helps pay the rent and keeps me going, and it makes me feel great, like people appreciate me. I know that money can cause evil in the world, people's greed for money, but trust me, I have a good heart, I have a good soul, and that's why I'm trying to be a performer. I'm trying to be a good role model for the next generation and change the world by inspiring people to believe in themselves and to believe that anything is possible. You just have to work hard and never give up. This is the music still. Yes, I think we all appreciate real people, but it's also good to realize how much deception that there is in the world. Okay, so back to my story. So I went to Africa. I had this girlfriend in Kenya. I went to Israel. I went to Haifa and visited the Baha'i gardens because I was raised Baha'i, and my mother had signed me up for this trip where you get a free trip to the Baha'i gardens after like 20 years. And so I went there to Israel. I went to Europe, saw Europe. I went to Morocco. I really got taken advantage of in Morocco. The Moroccans are kind of very shisty towards the tourists. But point being, I got to see the world. I went to Spain and Italy and the United Kingdom. Then, a year later, I returned to Africa to do... Actually, this was my graduation present to myself. Well, aside from the gorilla suit. So, after I graduated college, it was the height of the recession. It was 2007, and everybody knew that there was a recession going to come. Right? So, I realized it was really hard to find a job. I graduated with a business economics degree because I wanted to own and run a recording studio. I wanted to produce music for a living. Be a music producer. Not just a musician, because I saw the musicians as starving artists. I realized that there wasn't very much money in music. And with the whole Napster thing and internet music, it was becoming increasingly difficult to make a living as a non-cover band musician. So with a business degree, 2008 or 2007, 2008, nobody was hiring because the recession was happening. So I went to Africa and I funded my own project with, I sent out little letters that, hey, all my family, I'm graduating. You know, a graduation is the WASP's bar mitzvah. This is when, you know, you send out the letters inviting people to your graduation because your family member across the country won't be able to make it, but they will be able to send you a check for $100. And that's what happened, and I got all this money from family, and then I returned to Africa. I went back to Kenya, and through all of those connections that I met, I'm going to turn off the music. You got a little taste of it.
Yay.
Through all, oh, Melissa's happy that I'm not using her phone anymore.
Thank you.
Through all those connections that I made studying abroad in Kenya, studying traditional African music, I organized a trip. And here's where it gets really exciting, guys. I organized this trip where I traveled to around Kenya and I recorded traditional African music with portable recording equipment. I had this Fostex field recorder slung around my shoulder with 2 microphones and a studio crossed pair like that, trying to mimic 2 ears hearing, right? And I traveled to rural villages and I recorded traditional African music and I produced a compilation CD. And I also took those recordings and I submitted them to ILAM, which is the International Library of African Music, which is the largest library of traditional sub-Saharan music in the world, in Grahamstown, South Africa, at Rhodes University. So I was doing this whole recording project in Kenya, and I ended up in West Kenya, by Lake Victoria in Kisumu. And then I traveled up to Kitale in Kenya. And, you know, I had seen my girlfriend, I had Christmas dinner with her, but then I left to go on my field recording trip. And I went to the coast, I recorded the Mijikenda tribe, I recorded the Meru tribe. Oh my gosh, when I would go into these rural villages, the word had already spread through the village that this white man was going to come to record the music. In a lot of these villages, for the children, I was the first white man that they had ever seen. You know, I'd have kids peeking over bushes and rocks and stuff saying, Mzungu, Mzungu. They'd never seen a white man before. And there was the old man that would walk up to me and want to shake my hand and ask, what are you doing here? Why did you come to Meru village? You know, speaking what little English they could. Actually, a lot of the older people couldn't even speak English. They couldn't even speak Swahili. They only knew their mother tongue of Meru. So I would show up, and then the next day, 20 musicians would come. And I would tell them ahead of time, I do not need dancers. I do not need the elaborate costumes. I just want the musicians. And they would tell me, you don't understand. The dancers, the costumes are part of the music. It will not be the same without the dancers and the costumes. And sure enough, when these 20 dancers showed up the next day with these long flowing grass skirts and all these bells on their ankles, and they danced in unison to the beat and the music, and did backflips for me. I mean, they did acrobatics for me. I saw that the costumes and the dancers were part of the song, were part of the music, because they needed the dancers to shake those bells and to rustle those grass skirts and those reed headdresses. I mean, it would not have sounded authentic without the dancers. In the midst of this recording project, I got caught in a conflict situation. Now, my grandparents had told me not to go to any of these African countries when there's an election going to take place. But I did anyways. I didn't even check to see when elections were happening. And that's how ethnocentric us Americans can be. Is when I was in Kenya, they would ask me, you know, it was the first primary when it was Obama, Democratic primary, where it was Obama versus Hillary. And the people in Kenya were like, who do you like more, Obama or Hillary? I mean, they knew who our primary candidates were. They knew who our presidential candidates were, right? I didn't even know who their president was. I didn't even know that they were having an election, right? Hey, there's nothing wrong with being gay. Hey, thank you, B-Rad. So anyways, this election happened, and the election got rigged. And people started fighting all throughout Kenya. There was mass genocide taking place. Not too far from where I was in the town of Kitale, in the town of Eldoret, 35 women and children were burned alive in a church. They were seeking refuge, sanctuary inside of a church. And the attitude of the people who set the church on fire was, well, if you are hiding from us, then you are guilty of being Kikuyu. Kikuyu was the president's tribe. the former president, the incumbent, who had rigged the election. The Kikuyu tribe was based around Nairobi, but they had spread out all throughout Kenya and became the main business owners around Kenya. And because a lot of the wealth and power was centralized within the Kikuyu tribe, when that election was rigged by the president, everybody started taking out their aggression, their anger. All the other tribes started taking it out on the Kikuyus. So anybody, if it was a Kikuyu business, a store, they would set it on fire. If it was a Kikuyu bus company, they would set the bus on fire. If you were Kikuyu, they would kill you. They would start to talk to you and they would see, what kind of accent does this man have? What is your mother tongue? Can I speak to this person in their mother tongue? Right? They would kill them. Right? I want to come to India, Manish. So, I found myself seeking refuge in this family homestead outside of Kitale, in the middle of nowhere. And, you know, the people that I was staying with, this guy Arnold and his family, they were telling me, oh, don't leave now. There's too much fighting. Travel will be very difficult. It's not a good time to leave. So I stayed in that family homestead. I missed out on opportunities to record the other music that I planned on recording because I was trying to seek refuge in this family homestead. And as we were listening to the radio, it sounded like the fighting and the violence was only getting worse. It was only escalating. And then as soon as I heard that a member of parliament was assassinated, actually 2 members of parliament got assassinated, I knew that it was only escalating, it was only getting worse, and I realized that I had to get back to Nairobi because I had a plane ticket. In 5 days, I had to fly out of Nairobi to get to South Africa because I was supposed to start an internship at a recording studio in Johannesburg, South Africa. So I had them take me to the bus depot, and they waved me goodbye, and they said, just say prayers. God is on your side. And I boarded a bus to go to Kisumu because my plan was to go to Kisumu, and although the rival president who should have won the election was from that town of Kisumu, and the Luo people, the tribe that he came from, was the most angry tribe, I realized that I just had to get to the nearest airport and catch a flight over to Nairobi. I get on this bus, and the bus is going, and I'm telling you, we were driving at nighttime, and to see buildings on fire in Africa at nighttime, where there's no fire department to put out these buildings, to hear gunshots at nighttime in Africa, people don't just waste their bullets shooting for target practice or for fun. You know, to see this, burning fires, was really scary. It was terrifying on this bus ride. And we get to this town called Kakamega. And in Kakamega, it was rumored that they had roadblocks happening. And so the bus did not go into the town. The bus dropped everybody off at the edge of town before the roadblocks started. Because every time you came to a town along the highway, there would be roadblocks. And what the people would do was they would set tires on fire in the middle of the road. Rubber tire fires burn for a very long time, and you cannot put them out with water. You need some kind of foam system. Carbon dioxide foam or fire extinguisher to put out a tire fire. Then if a bus was trying to go down the highway, the angry people on the sides of the highway would rush the bus, make the bus stop. They'd order everybody off the bus. They would check people's IDs. They would see what tribe the people were from. And if they were Kikuyu, they would kill them on the spot. And then they would set the bus on fire. And then the point at which the bus was set on fire in the middle of the road became the next roadblock zone. Because, you know, if a bus is just, there's a charred bus in the middle of the road. No, I'm not married. If there's a charred bus in the middle of the road, it's an opportune location to set up a roadblock. So, get to the edge of Kakamega, and I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. There's a guy on a bicycle that said, I'm a bicycle taxi. I will take you wherever you want to go. I asked him to take me to hotels, but all the hotels are closed up. Every single shop, every single business was closed up because of the mass looting that was taking place. You know, because there was no law and order, because the police weren't working, everybody started looting all these stores and shops. So basically all the businesses closed. I hop on this bicycle, and there's no hotels open. I see the remnants of businesses that have been set on fire. I see the roadblocks of tires burning the road. I see from a distance people marching in the streets, like people demonstrating, like in protest. The bicycle takes me to the edge of town, and I'm like, I end up literally, he takes me to the edge of town, and then there's a truck taxi, a truck bus that was, putting people onto it. And I'm like, oh, great, there's another bus. There's another truck taxi that's going to take me as far as he will go. Well, he doesn't take me very far, probably like 6 or 7 miles. And he tells me, okay, he's going to turn to the right and go to this other random town that I don't want to go to. I'm sorry, I want to continue this story. I can't answer the questions. I only do that for like a half an hour a day. It depends on what I'm going to be up to. Half an hour to an hour. I've got a lot of things to do in each day. So anyways, completing the story. Hey, Russian guy, I can't read your name. So I get out of this truck and I find myself walking down this highway in Kenya by myself. I mean, it's a 2-lane rural road by myself. And I try to make friends with this other guy that's walking nearby me. I remember his name. His name was Shadrock. What's up, alien zombie? I was walking with Shadrock, and Shadrock tells me he's going to his family's homestead, but if I absolutely have to, I can stay with them, right? So I felt comfortable and secure. So I'm walking seemingly by myself down this highway in Africa. White man by himself in Africa where there's civil unrest, upheaval, and fighting going on all over the place. And finally, after 2 hours, I see this motorcycle going down the highway. And I flag him down. I'm like, hey, please give me a ride as far as you'll take me down this highway. Right? And I'll pay you a little bit of money. So I give him a little bit of money. I get on the back of the motorcycle. He takes me down the highway. And this is where it gets scary because we start to come to towns where there's active roadblocks and there's tires on fire in the middle of the road. And there's angry youth on the side of the road with rocks and machetes yelling at us. Right? At some points, they tried to rush towards the motorcycle. At one point, there was a teenage girl with a giant rock overhead, like running full speed at the motorcycle, like shouting, ODM, 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 like she's going to throw the rock at me to knock me off the motorcycle, a giant rock overhead. And so I learned the best thing to do is to hold my fist in the air. That's the motion for ODM, for the Orange Democratic Movement, the party that the president who should have won the election came from. I start holding my fist in the air, and every time there's angry youth on the side of the road with rocks and machetes, I hold my fist in the air and shout, ODM, 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 to show them that I'm in support of them. They obviously knew that I was not Kikuyu, right, because I'm a white man, but I was worried that somebody might become opportunistic and use it as an opportunity to rob me or something. So we would come to these roadblocks, and obviously the motorcycle was the only thing that could get around the roadblocks. Larger vehicles could not drive past them, right? At one point, there's a group of angry youth in the middle of the road with rocks and machetes. And the motorcycle driver, they're like blocking the road. And the motorcycle driver speeds up to make them part every which way, right? Because nobody wants to try to knock you off a motorcycle when the motorcycle is driving at 65 miles an hour. Because you know that you're going to get severely injured if you try to hit that motorcycle. So finally, we get to this town of Mbili, right? And the motorcycle driver says, okay, I'm going to the left, right? You want to keep going down the highway if you're going to Kisumu, so you should probably get off here, right? So I find myself in this town, and luckily, I'd been eating bread and peanut butter for a day. Luckily, there was a little restaurant. I should write a book, right? Luckily, there's this little restaurant that serves me a little bit of a little sandwich, right? That was the only thing that they had because everybody had eaten all the rest of the food. And I try to figure out how am I going to get out of this town now. I buy a bus ticket. Supposedly out of this town, there was a bus ticket. The bus was going to go to Nairobi, right? Which is complete bullshit because when we all boarded the bus drove for an hour, and then people flagged down the bus and said, you don't want to go any further down this highway because there's roadblocks down this highway and they will kill you, right? So the bus turns around and takes us back to Mbele, and the owner of the bus company just pocketed everybody's money and went through a back gate and hid while everybody's demanding we want our money back, right? Then while I was in this town, I saw a bunch of people looting a bunch of stores. And I'm like looking over this wall, seeing all these people taking all this grain and different goods out of the stores. And I hear gunshots. And to see like 30 to 40 people flee in panic, running every which direction because they have no idea where to run to, because they don't know where the gunfire is coming from. Like, that was scary. I mean, to hear gunshots alone in Africa is really scary. So I spent New Year's, I got a hotel, little hotel, and I spent New Year's in this hotel, and everybody was sad. They were bummed. They were like, it's New Year's Eve and we want to be partying and having a good time, but instead we're stuck in this hotel. You know, we should. And we heard gunshots all through the night. And I'm telling you, when you hear gunshots in Africa, it's no joke. People don't shoot for fun. Then the next day, you know, I went to the police station. I asked the police, hey, can you guys take me to Kisumu? They said, it's going to cost you. They named a price, and it was literally like, they would give me a police escort for $500. Oh my God, no.
What they say?
You should have got a hooker, said somebody. My girlfriend's laughing at you right now.
Do not point at me.
Oh man, thank you, Ren. Oh man, later's Ben or Ren. Okay, so anyways, I finally find this motorcycle taxi, and he agrees to take me into Kisumu. But it was a pretty stiff price. I think I paid him like $30, which is a lot of money in Africa, to take me to Kisumu. You know, he takes me, and we have to go past more roadblocks where there's burning tires in the middle of the road, tires on fire, and angry youth again, you know, and I do the same thing, hold my fist in the air. You know, one of the freakiest things that I saw was in Africa, in a lot of third world countries, you have street children, orphan children, who huff glue all day long. This is their drug of choice, because to put a little bit of glue inside of a baby food jar or a little bottle, little like alcohol bottle, is very, very cheap. And they just walk around with the glue bottle stuck to their lip, huffing glue all day long, and it kills all of their brain cells. And, you know, eventually they go brain dead, and it's very, very unhealthy. So I saw, they call them glue babies. And I saw one of these orphaned glue addict children. He's probably about 12 years old. 11 years old. I saw him, and he had burns all across his body, all across the side of his body, right? Just like white burns, this black kid. And he was playing with a burning tire. He had this tire that was on fire, and he was rolling it around with a stick and trying to kick it around. And I'm thinking, gosh, he's high on glue. It's killing the pain. And I mean, this is the sight that I see as the motorcycle driver is passing by him, right? I'm like, did he just play with this burning rubber tire so much that he burnt himself? Is that what's going on here? Really, really scary sight. So as we're going down the hill, going into Kisumu, the third largest city in Kenya, the city where the rival president came from, the city that had suffered the most violence, the people had burnt their water department. They burnt the only large factory in town down to the ground. We're going down the hill. I see Lake Victoria on the right, and then I see Kisumu on the left, and I see plumes of smoke rising out of different locations in this city of 500,000 people. Like, and I'm thinking, holy moly, I'm driving down into this city to go to the airport. I'd also left my larger bag at the YWCA in this town. That was the other reason for returning to this town full of a lot of violence. As we get to the outskirts of town, there's a giant roadblock where they had set about 7 to 10 different vehicles, different buses and trucks and cars on fire in this giant cluster in the middle of the highway. It was just like this like cluster of vehicles that had been set on fire. And as we get up to this roadblock, this little man comes out with a big stick. He's a little old man, like probably like 60 years old. He's like, you pay toll now. He set up an impromptu toll booth, an opportunist he was. And he asks for what converted to $1.25 What's not Pravna Bat? He asked for $1.25 in Kenya shillings. Like, that was a lot of money to him, but I was like, $1.25 to not have you start hitting me with a stick? Of course I'll pay this money. Then luckily when I get into Kisumu, people told me that there had already been a week of fighting. And I had to survive off of bread and peanut butter for essentially 3 days because there was no food stores open. There were no grocery stores open. Because of the roadblocks, there was no way for trucks to bring fresh produce from the farms into the towns, right? So there was no food, right? And because of this, after a week of fighting, the people had started to get very hungry, and they started to worry about how I'm going to get food. So the fighting had died down. So it had become much more peaceful in the town, but I still saw groups of street children fighting and throwing rocks at each other and trying to steal. Next day, I make it into the airport, and the situation of the airport was pandemonium. I mean, literally, this is a building that's probably 3,000 square feet that was packed wall to wall full of people, and I saw people giving bribes left and right to get onto the next airplane. Literally, they were flying flight after flight from Kisumu to Nairobi, then empty plane back to Kisumu to pick up the next group of people. I waited all day long, and I got on the very last flight that was going to fly that day. And I felt scared because I was like, man, this pilot is probably seriously overworked flying back and forth all day long. I saw Peace Corps girls, 23-year-old girls that were volunteering for the Peace Corps, bawling their eyes out because of all the violence that was going on around us. It was really, really crazy. And then when I get back to Nairobi, I managed to call up a friend who lived in a gated community. This is my friend Bijan Yazdani, a guy that I knew through the Baha'i Faith. He was a Baha'i. He was working for U.S. Aid. He lived in a gated community, so I sought refuge at his place for the weekend while, I waited to catch my plane in Nairobi. I keep the homeless man mask in my closet. So, after I fly out of Nairobi, I am out of the frying pan and into the fire because I had an internship at a recording studio. The deal that I had with the producer was he was going to put me up. He was going to help me find a place to stay. I was working in his recording studio for free. He puts me up with his star singer, who, unbeknownst to him, is a crackhead. Her boyfriend is a crack dealer. So I find myself living in Turfentine, Johannesburg. Turfentine is the township area, which is an area of colored people, which colored is not a racist term in South Africa. Colored means that you're half black, half white. This is kind of a rough area that was like a third Nigerian people and 2/3 colored people. Colored also means that you're of mixed race. It's like being brown. It's like you're not black, you're not white, you're in between. So South Africa, they call it the Rainbow Nation because it's like about 75% black, 10% white, and then 15% mixed races of colored or people from Malaysia or people from Arabia.
Kitty.
It's a kitty, yes. Melissa shushed me so she could hear a kitty that's a cat in heat. So, I find myself, so this is a very rough neighborhood in South Africa. They have people from Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, all over the place, mixed up, all in South Africa. And I'm staying in this kind of dangerous neighborhood where every single house has barbed wire or electric wire fencing around it to keep out burglars. They would have rolling blackouts, and whenever there were blackouts, this is the time when thieves and burglars would take advantage of the electric fences not working anymore. But it took me about 2 weeks to realize that I was staying in a crack house, right? At some point, one of Shahid's, Shahid was the boyfriend who was the crack dealer. One of Shahid's friends offered me crack. He was like, do you want to smoke crack? And then he said, ha ha ha, I'm just joking. Then I noticed people bringing stolen TVs and stolen lawnmowers to the door, trying to get their next fix of crack rock. And then Shahid would call this other guy to come with a truck and pick up the stolen property to take it away to sell it. Right? Shahid would arrange that. Shahid's house, where I was living at, was one of the few houses that did not have electric wire or barbed wire around the whole entire perimeter, because everybody in the neighborhood was afraid of this guy. He would tell me, "Danny, you're my American friend. If anybody ever fucks with you, tell them you know Shahid, and they will fuck with you no longer. If the police ever mess with you, give you a hard time, you give them my phone number. Here, I write my phone number on a card. Give it to them. They know who I am. I pay them money." So this guy had bullet holes going out of his truck from when he had shot somebody. He had shot his girlfriend in the leg 3 months before I arrived and gotten his gun taken away. He wasn't in prison or anything. He had gotten his gun taken away. He had a sword that he would use. I saw him throw a sword at his girlfriend's baby's daddy, right? The baby's daddy came to take custody of the child. And as he's driving away with the kid in the car, Shahid chucks his sword full speed at the pickup truck, trying to what? Like slice into the guy's tire. It was a little bit disconcerting that the only gun in the house was owned by Shahid's 17-year-old son, who was a gangbanger, kind of. He was like kind of trying to be a thug, right? Then they had a 12-year-old daughter that wanted to confide in me, right? They had kicked the 12-year-old daughter out of her bedroom so that I would stay there in her room and pay them rent money, right? She's staying now with a little brother. But one day, I come home and I see a used condom on the windowsill, right? I'm like, what the heck? I've been staying here for a little while, and there's a used condom on the windowsill. What the hell is this shit? Then a few days later, the 12-year-old daughter, confides in me. She's like, "I want to tell you something. I just lost my virginity." And I was like, "Really? You don't say?" Because that's what that condom was from, right? You just like left the dirty condom on the windowsill. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know he did that." Because obviously it was the guy that did that. She's like, "Please don't tell my mom. I can't talk to her about this type of stuff." And I was like, "Oh my God. You just like told me that she lost her virginity in the bed that I was sleeping in while I was off doing the internship at the recording studio." Really bizarre. They had a 5-year-old child, the same kid that got taken for custody. He would wake up before the parents. The crackhead parents wouldn't wake up until 10 in the morning, and they wouldn't fix this kid breakfast. The kid would be begging me to make him a sandwich in the morning. He'd be like, "Can I have I would make myself a sandwich in the morning, and he would come pull on my shoulder and say, "Mr. Danny, can I please have half your sandwich? I'm hungry." This 5-year-old would say this to me, right? He was already gaining skills of manipulation. Really crazy. Yes, a lot of people had guns in South Africa. To answer your question. You know what? If somebody gives me a super chat donation, I will get really vulnerable and say the naughty thing that I did when I was in South Africa. The kids, even, he had 2 younger, like, thuggish guys. He had 2 younger thuggish guys that were, like, about my age that did his dirty work. One of them was his driver, and I think one of them was kind of like a hitman type guy, right? I mean, this guy sold crack, all right? And I'll tell you what the naughty thing that I did is, no, I didn't get into any gunfights, but I saw a really brutal fight. What are you talking about, Alan? We're going to keep this clean, okay? If you want me to tell you the nitty-gritty, dirty, wrong thing that I did, super chat, it's up there. Send me a donation. I'll probably tell you anyways. But it shows that you appreciate me and my stories, helping me pay rent and all that. So anyways, I saw this brutal fight that showed me the power of the drop kick, right? This guy tried to smash a bottle over another guy's head in front of this club. I went out with the 2 henchmen, and they showed me a club in South Africa. And, everybody was really obsessed with my blue eyes in South Africa because I was hanging out with the colored people, the people that were half black, half white. And the colored people, I even went to Soweto. I even saw Nelson Mandela's birthplace in his home. But the colored people were really obsessed with blue eyes because Well, because they're half white, half black, some of the colored people actually have blue eyes. Oh, that's all right. You don't have to donate anything. I'll tell you guys anyways. So I saw this fight. The guy tries to break this bottle over this guy's head. And it doesn't break. And then they start fist fighting each other. And then as the one guy who's a black guy is walking away, the guy who's colored does a drop kick on him. And he runs full speed at him and then jumps and lifts his feet out and just does a double kick on the guy's back and kicks the guy into a car. Yes, actually, the sutras they are similar. It is a similar thing, Clutch. Um, so, anyways, this crazy thing happens. Oh, and mind you, the best day of my life that happened before I went on this trip was I tackled a purse snatcher. Right? That's another story where I actually did lay down the law with my fist. Right? I tackled a purse snatcher in front of Trader Joe's, and I'll come back to the story. The drop kick in the crack house in Johannesburg. Oh wait, maybe first things first. I'll tell you about tackling the purse snatcher after I'm done with the South Africa story. So, anyways, I was there in the crack house, living there, and well, here's the dirty truth: is I was like, when in Rome. They offered me crack, and I tried smoking crack because I was staying in a crack house. I was like, well, I want to understand, what these people are up to. And mind you, the woman, the girlfriend told me, don't let any of these people peer pressure you into doing anything that you don't want to do. Well, when I started smoking crack with these guys, they started pressuring me to keep smoking with them, to smoke more and more. And I said, my heart is already racing. Like, I don't want to get a heart attack. I don't want to have a heart attack. I feel my heart thumping really fast, and I do not want to have a heart attack. But they kept trying to pressure me. But I said no. It was weird. Crack, it felt really fucking good in my brain, in my head. It was just like, it felt like a nicotine head rush, but it was way more intense. What up, Popeye? It was way more intense than the nicotine head rush. It was just like, it felt like my head was like floating in just like really good pleasure up in the brain. Anyways, I was like, when in Rome, and I tried that stuff. I had a really bad day when I was trying to buy a bus ticket to go, and I was going to help this. Well, I wanted to go to Grahamstown, South Africa to submit my recordings to the largest archive of traditional sub-Saharan music. And as I was on my way to buy the bus ticket, I got pickpocketed. Somebody stole my wallet, right? Luckily, they didn't steal my passport, but they stole, I think it was a baby, because I was at an internet cafe, and this little toddler started touching me from behind. Right? I was like, hee, it's just a little baby toddler guy, right? And the mom was watching him, but I know that toddler, that 3-year-old stole my wallet, because they touched me. They touched my back. I felt it. Lost my wallet, and because I lost my wallet. I didn't know what I was going to do. I got a hold of the Baha'is again, the religion that I was raised, because I knew that there would be Baha'is in South Africa. And I got in touch with the National Spiritual Assembly and said, I'm a Baha'i with an interest in recording music, and I would like to meet other Baha'is in South Africa. So they put me in touch with this Baha'i named Walid Jasset. And I showed Walid the portable recording equipment that I had, and Walid said, wow, you'd be perfect to conduct a project that the Baha'i Publishing Trust wants to fund. There's money for this, and they will pay you to travel around South Africa, Swaziland, Lesotho, and yeah, that's right, live a little, don't be scared. So they paid me to travel around with my portable recording equipment, travel around South Africa, Johannesburg. I went Lesotho, Swaziland. These are the 2 little countries inside the middle of South Africa, recording the Baha'i musicians for them. So this is really insane. In 9 days, I traveled to 9 different locations and recorded 12 different musical groups. I went to Alexandria Township. Oh my gosh, I saw the slums of Johannesburg, which were so gross. There was no plumbing. They set up porta potties for the people to go to the bathroom of. I have a picture of this. I saw like just a puddle of overflowing porta potties and shit and piss just in front of the porta potties. When we went on that trip, I saw the second time that I saw a dead body laying in the middle of the road that got hit by a car. There was a bloody sheet over this body. The first time that I saw a dead body, it was a security guard in the middle of the road in Tucson, Arizona that had been stabbed to death. We saw blood all over the security guard's white t-shirt. They got stabbed by a naked guy who was having a schizophrenic episode. Anyways, seeing dead bodies is pretty freaky. You know, that whole time that I was in Kenya, I did not see a dead body. But I did see one in South Africa, which Johannesburg is the most crime-filled city in the world. Like, what was the other crime thing that I saw? Oh, you know, I'd be like talking on my cell phone in a bus and somebody would just from the street would just try to reach into the bus to grab the cell. I'd feel their hand try to reach in and grab the cell phone out of my hand. You know, South Africa is so corrupt. There's so much corruption, so much theft that I had my camera and my cell phone stolen out of my bag by the baggage handlers of South Africa Airlines when I took a trip to Madagascar when I was staying in Johannesburg. So Madagascar was amazing. The most beautiful plants and animals. I mean, there's no poisonous animals except for the sea snakes in the ocean. There's no poisonous creatures in Madagascar. Everything uses camouflage to survive. There's the widest variety of chameleons. There's geckos that look like leaves. There's boa constrictors. There's lemurs. It's so beautiful and amazing. I recommend. I mean, Madagascar and Turkey were my two favorite places to go to. You know, I had my camera stolen, which will bring me to how I got back at South Africa Airways. I'll tell you this in a second. So it was really amazing. I helped the Baha'is produce and record this album of their musicians, and the album was called Detached and Unplugged, right? So I got to go to Elizabeth and Durban and Lesotho, and I submitted my recordings to the largest archive of traditional sub-Saharan music in Grahamstown, South Africa at Rhodes University. When I was there, I stayed in a jailhouse that was converted to a hostel. You know, it was really amazing. I would go on night buses to the next town, and then in the morning, I would record the musicians, and I would sleep on the night buses. Every night, I would be on another night bus to go to the next place to record the next group of musicians. I mean, I went to Swaziland and recorded this giant choir of Baha'i musicians. They actually have a private Baha'i high school. Hey, what's up, Principia from Italy? Oh, no entiendo nada de inglés. Porque mi novia hablas español.
Hello. Hola.
Sí, mi novia
Hola.
hablas español. Habla con ella.
No puedo leer qué tú estás diciendo.
So yeah, sorry guys, I started posting videos in Spanish because I realized that I have a lot of supporters that speak Spanish from Spanish-speaking countries. I've been on several Spanish TV shows, the Don Francisco Show, Tengo Talento, Mucho Talento. Oh, mi novia es de Miami, Florida, y ella madre está dominicana y ella padre es de Cuba. So I was really, really proud of myself those 9 days when I recorded those and the next 2 days I spent mixing and mastering the recordings that I had taken. So I literally produced a compilation CD in 12 days, recording all these Baha'i musicians. And Waleed Jasset has gone on to start a recording studio and also has gone on to produce more Baha'i albums of the Baha'i Faith. So I couldn't reroute the trip that I had going back to Nairobi. I couldn't reroute it. I had to fly back into a war zone. But luckily, I had, I had plans with this girlfriend that I had in Kenya to visit her and to travel around Kenya and to have a good time around Valentine's Day. She was my girlfriend. I bought her a freaking ring, a gold ring for $20 in Johannesburg, South Africa. There's so many gold and diamonds that come out of South Africa that I thought, oh, this is a good place to buy a ring because it's probably much cheaper from the source. Didn't I buy you a necklace? Didn't I buy you a necklace, Melissa? Wait, did I buy you...
You made me a necklace.
I made you a necklace. What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
That's more heartfelt.
Yes, that's nice.
Look, Melissa, I'm saving the ring for something big, and I realized that when you give a ring to a girl, it means marriage, right? Right, Melissa? I just wanted to give her something.
Okay.
Did you hear that? Look, my girlfriend is getting jealous. She's over there sitting in the chair. She's like, you never bought me jewelry. And I was like, yes, I bought you this thing. Where's that?
It's in the car again.
She never even wears it. She like loses it sometimes.
It hurts my chest.
I bought her an opal and I made, it was kind of expensive,
It was
and I
nice.
made
I liked it.
and I made her a necklace, and this is the girlfriend that I have. Oh my God, Black Death says you should propose to her right now. No, I'm not going to propose to her when she's like all getting jealous. She's got the Latin Caribbean fire. She gets all jealous. She's like, you never gave me jewelry. And I'm like, yes, I did. I gave you an opal necklace, sweetheart. It was not...
Okay, enough. Stop it. Stop showing me in the video.
See, the Latin women are awesome and nice because they love pleasing their men. They love being, they're awesome. But the only problem is there's a lot of, like jealousy is something inherent in their culture. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's that Latin men are horn dogs or something. But, I'm telling my story, and as soon as I bring up, I brought a ring to this girl, she gets jealous. So anyways, I'm on the airplane flying back to Nairobi, flying into what essentially is a war zone that I had to escape out of on the backs of motorcycles past rebel roadblocks. And it's me and one other person on this airplane flying from South Africa to Kenya. And I was pissed. I was pissed because the baggage handlers at South Africa Airways had stolen my digital camera, and they'd also stolen my cell phone out of my bag. And South Africa Airways was refusing to give me any compensation. They were saying, oh, well, that's why you should have purchased baggage insurance from us. You should have bought our insurance. That would have paid for it. We're not going to give you any money. So here's what I did. I'd bought in a little sandwich container, right? And this is me being naughty. This is me at the age of 23 years old. And this is me being naughty. And also the proper way to say sorry is to say pardon. I have this little sandwich container. And first I take a cup. I go into the bathroom, and mind you, there's nobody on this plane. I'm going to say something really dirty. I went to the bathroom in the back of the plane. I peed in the cup. Then I take the cup of piss, and I throw it on the seats in the back of the airplane. Make sure, it gets on those seats. And then, right before the plane's about to land, I go to the bathroom again. I take this little sandwich box that I had from eating a sandwich, and I take a poop in that sandwich box. And then I take the poop in the box, and I go to my seat, my chair. And as the airplane is landing, I take that little turd that I had made, and I toss it on the ground in the seat, under the seat in front of me. And then I take that laminated brochure that says, this is how you escape the airplane in case it crashes. I took that laminated pamphlet of how to escape the plane, and I stick it on top of the turd. And then I'm sure to smear that turd back and forth and all around so that it gets embedded into the carpet of that airplane so that it's difficult to clean up, right? And then as I'm exiting the plane, I see all these people. The airport is packed with a ton of people ready to board that plane, getting ready. They're waiting to board that plane, and some unlucky person or unlucky stewardess who's going to have to clean up that turd. I mean, that was my way of getting back at the airline for having inherent theft taking place within their airline and not doing anything about it, not caring. You know, I mean, that was my way, my version of payback as a 23-year-old scallywag. I wasn't, we all make mistakes. That wasn't the best thing that I could have done. But when I returned to Nairobi, I meet up with my girlfriend on Valentine's Day. I give her a ring, this ring. I was like, I brought a gift for you. Happy Valentine's Day. She doesn't even want to hug me. She doesn't want to kiss me. And I'm like, what's wrong? Her name was Shay. I was like, what's wrong, Shay? I'm here to see you on Valentine's Day. And she says, when you said that you weren't going to come back because of the fighting, because of the war, it broke my heart. And I can never come back. You're the American on your trip, on your adventure. I'm the Kenyan that's stuck here to deal with it when there's fighting. You could just come and go as you please. I'm stuck here, and you left me. You didn't try to save me. I'm like, but I'm here, visiting you on Valentine's Day, flesh and blood. Well, she dumped me. Then and there, I mean, I was there to visit her in Nairobi on Valentine's Day, and she did not want to see me. She hugged me goodbye. I walked her to the bus. And then she left. I helped her father come and gain citizenship or residency in America later on. Her father, he sent me messages on email and said, will you help me? Will you write me a letter of invitation so that I can come to America on an extended visa? Because if he was using his buddy, who was just also a resident, not a citizen, he would not be able to get as long of a visa to stay in America. So I wrote him a letter of invitation, and then he came and stayed with me, the father of this girl. Oh, mind you, for Christmas dinner, when I was there before the fighting started, I slaughtered a goat because they were slaughtering goats for Christmas dinner. Africans, when they celebrate Christmas, they don't give gifts. They don't have the money for gifts, for presents. They just give food. They just eat and gorge themselves. Over the course of 3 days, they just eat and eat and eat. And there's no designated dinner. It's just like, well, eat whenever your stomach doesn't feel as full. So they slaughtered 2 goats. They made sausage out of all the entrails. They had all this ugali and all this African vegetables. They love collard greens in Kenya. Well, I helped slaughter a goat. And honestly, slaughtering, I'd slaughtered a chicken before. I'd cut off a chicken's head, and that was difficult because nobody would help me hold the chicken's head down onto the chopping block, and I was trying to slice the chicken's head with a machete while the chicken's head is just dangling there. I mean, when you hit a chicken's head and it's just like sitting there, you need like a flat surface that the chicken's head is resting against. Otherwise, the chicken's head's just going to go. You're not going to chop off the chicken's head. When I first hit that chicken and I saw a little bit of blood squirt out, but the knife did not go through the chicken's neck, I panicked. And I started grabbing the chicken's head and trying to chop it off. And finally, somebody would help me hold the chicken's head against the chopping block. And I chopped that chicken's head off and it flopped around. But killing a goat, slaughtering a goat was very intense because a goat is a much larger animal. And they had to tie its legs together, hog tie it. And the 2 other men that were helping to slaughter the goat held it down. I mean, they even had a veterinarian type person, come and make sure that the goat did not have worms, that the goat was safe to eat. But Shay's father had hired 2 guys to help them slaughter the goats. I asked if I could do the honors, and what I did to kill the goat, I saw them kill the first goat, and I start slicing through the neck of the goat, and immediately the goat starts screaming bloody murder. Right? And as I'm slicing, I get through the vocal cords, and immediately I hear the screams of the goat get distorted. Right? And as I slice through, the goat loses the ability to cry out. And as I get through the windpipe, I start to hear the goat trying to breathe, and I hear the blood flowing down into the throat, into the windpipe of the goat, and it starts gurgling and making bubbling sounds as the goat is trying to breathe through the blood flowing down into the larynx or whatever, the trachea of the goat. And then as soon as I get through that, I feel the spine. It's a hard spine, and I take the knife and I stab directly into the spine to sever the central nervous system, to put the goat out of its misery more quickly. I mean, the goat was thrashing and shaking, and the guys were holding it down. I mean, it knew that it was dying. And to feel that goat die in my arms, it was traumatic. You know, and we had seen somebody slaughter a goat before. And the mother of the people that were living next to us, the maids, she showed this 2-year-old child, this baby, the goat's head, and was like, bah, letting the child know that this was the head of the goat, and now the goat is dead. To desensitize the child from a young age about death and how it's a necessity to kill these animals. You see, us Westerners, we are so detached from the process of the slaughter of the animal, of the meat that we eat. We go to the grocery store and we buy it in this neat little package, right? It looks so neat and perfect. People don't know the suffering that goes into producing that meat, right? They don't know the conditions that the animals live in, right? But through being in the bush of Africa, I got to taste what meat should taste like if it is not affected by growth hormones. Because the meat that we have here is so plump, juicy, and succulent because of all the growth hormones that we pump into it. The meat over there in Africa is, you know, goat meat or cow meat, chicken meat even. It's much more tough and gamey. It's harder to chew. I mean, I was flossing my teeth for every day. I have to floss my teeth. I have to pick at my teeth. You know, I arrived for the graduation of Shay and several other classmates that I had. It was a really good time to return to Nairobi because this was before the age of Facebook. There was no way to keep in touch with these people except to show up during graduation and then just happen to see them. I didn't have their phone numbers. People's phones had changed, you know. That was the only way that I could meet up with them and coordinate with them to find contacts to record this traditional African music. So, you know, I made all these traditional African recordings. Anyways, I feel like through slaughtering the goat, I earned my right to be able to eat meat, to be a meat eater, because I experienced what it's like to kill an animal. And I feel like, you know, and then I tried also butchering it, because you have to cut the skin off of it very quickly. Otherwise, while the skin is still warm, otherwise the skin will harden against the muscle, and then it's very difficult to peel the skin off. And you want to peel that skin off. Franklin, Shay's father, sold the skin, the hides, to a drum maker. And when I'm cutting this skin off, I was not skilled at it. The guys slaughtering the goat, they had the skills, and they did it very quickly, but I did it very slowly, and I actually cut my hand open. I was bleeding. I said, okay, I'm going to leave this to the professionals. But I earned my right, and I saw how much work goes into keeping a goat, and then killing the goat, and then butchering the goat. It's very time-consuming to kill an animal yourself, but this meat, the traditional, the meat there in Africa, it's real. It tastes the way meat should taste. Anyways, then I meet up with my best friend Clay Letson, and we travel all around. Clay Letson's the guy that started the emergency circus. We travel all around Turkey. We go to Georgia. We go to Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Hungary. I went to Slovakia. And then Clay continued on through Europe. Man, Clay was such a horn dog. The whole time we were in Turkey, men kept saying, you should go to Ukraine. They have the most beautiful women. Clay kept being like, oh man, the girls in Turkey won't put out. They won't date us. Duh, yeah, because they're Muslim, right? Muslims are very conservative regarding sex, right? We get to Georgia, the country of Georgia, Kyrgyzstan. I almost got raped in the bathroom by a man. I swear to God. We were trying to find a place to eat. We had the craziest time. We couldn't figure out why there were so many flowers everywhere. Everybody was selling flowers. Then we come to find out that there's this Russian holiday called Women's Day. This is the Russians' version of Mother's Day. Instead of Mother's Day, they have Women's Day. Well, that's why there was all the flowers, but I don't know. We could not find a hotel for the life of us. This guy started leading us around, and he took us to this random weird apartment with this guy that played the sickest gypsy guitar. We saw disturbing things. I mean, we saw syringes on the ground. We saw so much poverty, abject poverty. We saw babies left alone on blankets. There would be a baby on the side of the road, on a blanket. The baby's asleep, and there's a begging bowl with some change in it to this baby, less than 1 year old, that's been left unattended by some gypsy mom. We could tell by the clothing of the baby that it was a gypsy baby. And this mother probably had 3 or 4 babies that they were watching over and tending to that were begging babies. Right? I'd never seen that before in my life, and I wish I had taken a picture of it. Oh, hi, Melissa.
Why?
Just don't get naked, okay?
What happened?
Just don't get naked and you'll be all right. She's just ignoring that. I'm always trying to include her in my videos because she's so pretty, but she gets shy. Anyways, we went to Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova. When we were trying to find food in Ukraine, and we go by this restaurant, and everything is in Georgia. Georgia was really hard to find a hotel. It was really hard to get directions and find streets. I mean, we explored a castle and stuff, and we were going to go to these sulfur saunas, but then we found out that it was too expensive. Clay was a penny pitcher. So we go into this restaurant, and everything's in Georgian script, and we couldn't read anything. We didn't know what the heck was going on, what to order. And there was this 2 tables in there, and one table was this large group of men, right? And we were like, we don't know what to eat. And then they beckon us over to their table, and they invite us to sit down with us. And in what limited English that they had, we tell them we're from America, and they'd be like, oh, you know Arnold Schwarzenegger? Oh, American. America. Oh, wow, Popeye. Of course you would, because your name is Popeye. You probably love fishing. So, these Russian guys are trying to get us, these Georgian guys, these Georgian men, were sitting at the table with us, and we're eating their food. They're like, eat the food. And they're like, drink this vodka with us. When they drink shots of vodka, they drink cups of vodka. They don't just drink a shot. They don't just take a shot. They chug cups full of vodka. And they would pour this cup all the way full and be like, chug, do it, drink, drink, drink. We'd only drink a little bit, and they'd be like, no, no, no. You drink it all. Drink it all. Like, we start to get drunk. And then I go to the bathroom to pee. And this man follows me into the bathroom. Right? Then when I'm done peeing, I see that he locks the door. Right? He locks the door behind him, and then he pushes me up against the wall. He starts trying to kiss me. But I'm like, no, no. I say no. Right? Everybody knows what no means. Then he tries to grab my dick. And I start pushing him away. Right? He keeps pushing me to the wall. I start to try to unlock the door, and he's trying to keep the door locked. And then I yell, I'm like, Clay! Right? When I yell, that's when he stops. He lets me go. He puts his head down. And then I walk into the room, and I say, Clay, yo, this dude just tried to rape me in the bathroom. Let's get the heck out of here. Wow. You know what, guys? I am getting really tired of talking. I'm going to have to finish this story later. Maybe this will be part 1. I stereotype my fans? What? You guys are my supporters, not my fans. No, I was just saying because of your name. Your name is Popeye. Popeye the Sailor Man. Oh, you're saying laugh out loud like it's a joke. Oh my gosh. How can I finish this story? My life story, part 1. And then I'll have a part 2 next week. Sunday at 4 p.m. Okay, guys? I'm in the middle of taking a ferry across over to Ukraine. And I'll finish the part about tackling a purse snatcher. The best day of my life was when I tackled a purse snatcher, apprehended a purse snatcher. I'll talk about how I discovered levitation. I did find a guru. Who taught me meditation, but I learned how to levitate on my own. What? Get my stuff. What happened when back to get your stuff? Oh, so I got Clay, and I was like, Clay, this dude just tried to rape me. Let's get out of here. Oh, so when I was in Kenya, I just got my bag from the YWCA and went to the airplane stuff. Went and caught an airplane. Oh my gosh, you guys, I gotta go. We're in Georgia. We went to Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Hungary. There was other crazy stuff that happened. We were trying to find the catacombs. When I was in Russia, when We were in Moldova. We got chased by kids throwing rocks at us. We met the Gypsy King, right? There are two different instances. A kid pulled a knife on us. I tackled the purse snatcher at Trader Joe's. I became a human statue. I moved to Los Angeles and sold my landscaping business. I started the Tucson Sculpture Festival through being a human statue. I learned how to levitate through standing very still. I learned how to levitate. My diaphragm is starting to hurt, everybody. This will be part 1. Part 2 will begin next Sunday. Okay, guys? I appreciate each and every one of you. I am in Koreatown, California, in Los Angeles. I love Korean food. Gypsies are an ethnic people of Roma. They're technically called the Roma. And it's believed that they are originally from Central Asia and Afghanistan, but they have migrated over to Eastern Europe. They're in Eastern Europe, Spain. Gypsy is kind of the derogatory term because it's been misused. The word has been misused by saying, I've been gypped. They prefer to go by Roma. I should go live on Sundays and Wednesdays. Hey, maybe I will. Oh, maybe that's because you're so sarcastic. Hey, thank you, Renzo. Okay, so you guys, please be sure to be here. It'll probably start at 4:30 Sunday, Pacific Standard Time. I say 4 p.m., but I'm usually late. My apologies. So we're going to start back up on the ferry going to Ukraine from Georgia. Just remind me next Sunday I'm leaving off at Georgia, the country. This is part 1. Part 1. Hello, Carla. Sorry, I'm getting off of here. This is my live stream Sunday, but if you're interested in the beginning, watch the start of the video. I talk all about my childhood. And part 2 will be next week. Yay! Thank you guys all for sticking here. Remember, you guys are the beautiful creation that God created because God, your creator, loves you for you. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no boo-boos, no mistakes, no fuck-ups. Because you are beautiful just the way you are. And God loves you for that. So take that creation that is the beautiful you and spread that all throughout the world. Remember, the point is to know thy creator. And to know thy creator, you will begin to know yourself